All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the community input meeting around City Council redistricting, specifically for Southwest Philly, and even more specifically, the part of Southwest Philly where there's a boundary right now between the 2nd council district and the 3rd council district. My name is Pat Christmas. I'm a staffer with the Committee of 70. Very busy time for all things government and democracy right now, between elections, voting, redistricting, of course, happening at different levels. But this is a big campaign specifically around council redistricting. I know that there's a lot happening with the other levels: state house, state senate, congressional, but council is the level that we're focused on in this particular meeting, in this particular project. And at least through the next maybe 2.5 months as council works on this. And I'm very grateful to have with me my colleague and friend, Abu Edwards. I'll hand it off to you real quick.
Thanks, Pat. Appreciate it. My name is Abu Edwards, born and raised in St. Philadelphia. Proud graduate of Wilberforce University, historically Black college. I've been an organizer in Philadelphia for about 10 years. I wear different hats in the community. Recently, I served as the director of Black male engagement for the Biden campaign, which was probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever had in my 10 years, engaging Black men between the ages of 18 to 40 to actually vote and to register to vote. So I'm a consultant with the Committee of 70, where we're trying to bring diverse voices, community voices to the table to talk about a very important issue, councilmanic redistricting, and why it's important and how it impacts us in our everyday lives. So I'm proud to work with Pat and the Committee of 70 on this project, and I look forward to engaging with you guys through this presentation. So since we have a small group, I would love to have everyone introduce themselves, what organization they're part of, and what brings them to the meeting. In particular, if you live in that particular community, we would love to just hear your feedback.
Good morning. My name is Pat White, and I'm actually from an organization called Bipod. I'm interested in these meetings because we don't hear about them enough. I think that one person knowing something can spread the word, because now we're on the Zoom thing and everybody's not capable of having the technology to do this. So what I hear, I try to write down and spread the word. I have family that lives in Southwest Philly, and I really would like them to know more about what's going on. Thanks.
Thank you. Brian?
Hi, my name is Brian Jefferson. I'm from the 44th Ward, 14th Division. I'm a committee person, and I'm just here just to get some information.
Ms. Charlene? You're unmute yourself, Ms. Charlene.
Sorry. Yes, I'm Charlene Wiltshire, born in South Philly, raised in West Philly, now living in the 10th district. So it's been a travel, but I am here to just hear the concerns of the 2nd and 3rd district. As a follower of Fair Districts PA and a member of my sorority's redistricting cohort, I've been very involved in mostly congressional and state House and Senate redistricting. But I know that at the local level, that's the basis of the building block into those into the Senate and into the congressional. So I'm very interested. I generally don't deal with my council person. I generally deal with council at large, for obvious reasons. But I know when your schedule originally, you didn't even have the 10th district scheduled. And I wondered why that, but I see that you've added it, which is good. Because I want to hear what's going on in my own district. Thank you.
So I guess, Pat, I'll turn over to you, or?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, I'll take it back and open us back up. So again, thanks so much for joining us. We have a nice small group this morning, which actually when it comes to talking about redistricting, which is it's a tricky subject at times, and kind of where communities are and where boundaries go, having a group of 100 people would actually be kind of tough. So the fact that we haven't had like 1,000 people on each of these meetings yet it'd be a wonderful problem, but a problem nonetheless to try to kind of focus the discussion. So what we're going to do is walk folks pretty quickly through some of the basics of the process. And I just want to note, I hope don't want this to be overwhelming at all, because frankly, the having a basic understanding of the process is important. But the even more important part will be in the latter part of the meeting, where we are going to take a look at that the boundary itself between the second and the third, to the extent there's conversation about that we could have this morning. So I'm gonna bear with me. I'm gonna open up my screen here and present, and then Charlene, if you're not careful, I'm gonna hand this over to you at some point, because I know you're starting to know the stuff backwards and forwards as well, having been with us once or twice. So everybody should see a screen here with a map of the city. Right, of course, we're not talking about the entire city of Philadelphia today, just this one area around the southwest. So this is what we hope to achieve over the next roughly 50 minutes, 60 minutes or so. We're going to learn just a bit about the council redistricting process and why it matters. There are some differences between this local level and the state and the congressional level. We're going to take a look at the current city council map and the population counts that we have as a result of this next census that we just had, the 2020 census. And then lastly, to talk about the council district boundaries in your area, right? Because that's ultimately where the rubber meets the road is how these boundaries will shift. And yeah, as we're going to see in just a minute, city council that actually gets that has the power in shifting these lines around. So this is it in a nutshell. City council redistricting. Council has 10 districts, right? We have 17 members of city council, 7 are at large that represent the entire city. 10 of them are district specific. So of course they're focused, they care about the whole city of Philadelphia, but they also care in particular about their district area and the constituents within their district. So all the city council has this responsibility and power to draw the lines, but it's the 10 members that really have the most at stake. And there's just a little bit of city law on this. And what the city law says is that council has 6 months to draw a new map, 6 months from the time that the census data is published. So that data was published in August, about August 12th. So 6 months from August 12th gets us to February 12th. February 12th is the deadline for city council to have their new map approved. So it's a limited amount of time. It's actually almost kind of unfortunate because we actually don't need these maps until 2023. Right, 2023 is when the next municipal election is. Next year is the midterms, a huge election, but we actually don't need the maps for 2022. So we've got a little bit of a time crunch here that we don't necessarily need to have, but that's what the law says. And of course, like probably the most fundamental purpose of redistricting is to ensure that our political districts across the United States, any level of government, have roughly the same number of people. And for our purposes here in Philly, for council districts, this means that the census just told us that we have about 1.6 million people in the city of Philadelphia. We grew by about 5%, at least according to the census. And so as far as our council districts go, this means that we should have about 160,000 people roughly per district in this new map that gets drawn. And if you do the arithmetic there, it's about 1.6 million divided by 10 districts. That's where the 160,000 comes from. So going back in history, there was a time where you could have, for example, one district with a couple 100,000 people, 250,000 people, another district maybe with 50,000. I'm just giving a generic example for political districts. That would be extremely unfair because the district with fewer people would basically have more political power, right? Each of their little votes would count more in a given election. So to kind of spread the political power out between districts, you need to have roughly the same number of people in each. So lastly, as far as timeline goes, again, the deadline for city council is February 12th. Another funny little twerk about local redistricting here in Philly, and this comes out of our city law as well, is that if that new mapping ordinance, if that bill is not passed and has not become law by February 12th, city council starts going without their paychecks. And that's an interesting little backstop that was put in the law to provide some incentive to get the job done. And also, just to be clear, when we say that it's a mapping ordinance or a mapping bill, it's a piece of legislation. So what they're going to do, presumably in January here, is they're going to introduce a bill. That bill will describe what the boundaries look like, ward by ward, division by division. And that bill has to go through the regular legislative process. So it has to go into a committee, it gets heard, gets a vote, comes out of committee, and then, just like any other piece of legislation, it will go to the mayor, who can sign it or veto it. So interestingly, as recently as 20 years ago, there was actually a number of disputes between then Mayor John Street and City Council at the time. Several of the disputes were not redistricting related, but this got caught up in it, and City Council actually went for 5 months past its 6-month deadline. It went for 5 months without getting their paychecks. So we don't anticipate that happening this time around. The overall map is just not that fraught. And we wouldn't see any, again, disputes or arguments that would cause that sort of delay, but it is kind of an interesting backstop that we have here in Philly for getting the map approved. And again, as far as timeline goes, we don't use these new districts until 2023, right? The May 2023 primary is when all the city council and the mayor's office will be on the ballot. But this is always a big deal when we redraw boundaries, because we use them for a long time, for the next 10 years. So we will use the new map that gets drawn here. We'll use it in 2023. Huge election, 2027, huge election, and 2031, huge election. That's when, again, all 17 council members and the mayor's office will be on the ballot in those years. So in a nutshell, that's what redistricting is. And as far as why it matters, it's all about representation and voice in the political process. The shapes of these districts can really impact fundamentally who has political power and who doesn't. And generally what this, on the ground, kind of what this means is when, not always, but often, if a community is kept whole within a given district, that's going to be a good thing for it. It's basically going to mean it's going to have a louder voice and get more attention from its representative. A community that is split between districts will essentially have its representation and its power diluted. And even in the best of circumstances, where you have earnest, hardworking elected officials who are doing everything they can for everyone within their districts, especially here in Philly, like these are huge districts, right? 160,000 people. If you look at this, is actually the previous council map that you see here. But these districts cover a lot of territory. And if only a part of a community or part of a neighborhood or part of a business corridor is within a given district, it's just not going to get the same attention it will from that elected official than it would otherwise. And you see there's a similar dynamic that plays out at the state house, state senate, and congressional level when you have communities that are split between districts. And also, just to be clear, again, community can be a lot of different things, right? And that's what we'll hopefully talk about a bit about this morning. Community can be neighborhood, it can be business corridor, it can be school catchment area, it can be a language or ethnic group, like a region of the city, right? South Philly, West Philly, North Philly, larger regional communities within the city of Philadelphia. So that's kind of why this matters on the other side. And actually, I guess you can see pretty clearly here on the right hand side of the screen in 2001, that map clearly has something wrong with it. And there are actually a whole bunch of communities that were harmed in this map. The biggest one, and the reason it was drawn this way, is that the Latino community in North Philly, right? Large, diverse Latino community we've had in North Philly for a long time. That's where the 7th district predominantly is. You can see the 7th district there kind of snakes back and forth across Roosevelt Boulevard and goes deep into the Northeast, all the way up to, it looks like, Grant Avenue. And basically what the map drawers at that point were trying to do was to include a whole bunch of white voters in that 7th district, who of course live nowhere close to the 7th district and do not live in North Philly, and effectively diluting the political power of the Latino community in North Philly. So the Latino community was harmed in this map, right? Because they had their power diluted. But then all the neighborhoods and communities that are kind of carved up by these districts zig-zagging back and forth, it's happening in the 5th district, just in North Philly there along the boulevard, all the way up to the Northeast. You can see the top of the 1st district as well, in pink or red there. That gets pretty thin at one point. So every single community was split by those districts, was put in a bad spot because of this map. So this is I guess it's a good thing that we have this as an example of what not to do. But of course, the bad thing was like, this is the map we had for at least a couple cycles, 20 years or so. So this is definitely what we want to avoid. And just one kind of final point, and then Charlene will kick you for a question, is that of course the map we have now, right there in the middle, this is the map we saw at the beginning of the presentation, looks much better, right? There is a bit of an eye test when you look at these maps. If they're more compact, if there are fewer kind of funny little squiggles or jigsaw looking pieces of the map, that sometimes they're wholly political and they should not be there. Other times there's another reason that may not be a nefarious or malicious reason for the feature being there. It may be something weird about the geography in that part of the city, or that again we do have to make some decisions here to get the districts roughly equal in population. So the point we've always stressed when Boo and I bring up this slide is that the reason the map looks so much better is because of the advocacy and the organizing that happened 10 years ago, and especially in and around the Latino community, to fight for a map that was going to be more fair for them, and actually again not just fair for the Latino community in North Philly in the 7th, but all those other communities, all those other neighborhoods that were split previously. So we don't expect a radically different map on the other side of this. You can see for the most part, even in the 2001 map, these districts, the cores have been largely the same for a long time, but even what seem like smallish changes when you look at the whole city, like on the ground in a given community, those are not small changes. Just shifting the boundaries just a few blocks one way or the other can matter a great deal. And that's why we're trying to have as many of these meetings and conversations as possible. It's really just kind of one phase of the campaign. I should have stressed at the outset that obviously we don't have everybody in and around the boundary between the 2nd and 3rd district with us this morning, but these meetings are just a phase of the work, and there's going to be another series of meetings or conversations of some sort in January and February in the new year too. So I'll pause there for a second. And actually, Charlene, before if it's okay, before I kick it to you, Abu, is there anything else that you think we should stress or that I missed in that overview there?
Actually did a really good job, Pat.
always appreciate that. Charlene, over to you. I saw your hand go up.
Calling on me?
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, Pat, I have to tell you all that I have a hearing disability, and part of the hearing disability is when people talk rapidly, I lose entire syllables. And Pat, your speech pattern is so fast
Oh no.
that I missed my name. And if everybody hadn't been muted, I wouldn't have known I was supposed to be speaking.
Mm-hmm. Oh no. Here, let me bring us off the share screen for a second. I'm sorry about that. I will that actually, I know that's a habit I need to work through here.
Slow down or do closed captioning.
Yeah, right. Okay, is that I guess that was the question or the thought. Please slow down.
Okay, it's okay.
We will do that. We will do that going forward. Oh, there we go. There's one more mark.
Okay. Yeah, my question is, do you know whether or not City Council plans to be more proactive with the public than reactive to negative press? Meaning, if they're going to draw up a bill, are they going to get comments beforehand? If not, once they've drawn the bill, will they introduce it to the public and let us comment? Are they asking for us to draw maps? Because now all these apps, Days Redistricting app is out there. All sorts of apps are now created where the public can draw maps. And I'd hate to see locally, meaning Philadelphia, lag behind what we're doing for national and state by just being reactive to negative comments and maybe not being willing to change what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
So can Committee of 70 implore them to allow the public to have a lot of input into this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll take a dig at that first. That is certainly the intent here. And actually it's there have been scores of groups, scores of organizations that have been talking about this, preparing for this, working on this since the summer, including Fair Districts Philadelphia. And there was it's called a roadmap, basically a process agenda for the things that City Council really should do to have an open process, an accessible process, an inclusive process. And that roadmap was actually shared with council a couple months ago. It was shared with them in October. And there's 6 parts. We can make it's posted on 70's website. We can make sure everyone gets it after the meeting. But it was, and Charlene, probably because you're also familiar with what is happening at the other levels, it's a lot of the same stuff we're asking of the folks in Harrisburg. Just like you said, to have public hearings, to put forward a proposed map and give people time to provide feedback, to try to explain what the choices you made when you drew that proposed map, and then when you made that final map. There's a whole series of steps that was in this roadmap that got shared with City Council. I'll give just my kind of personal take on kind of where things are. I mean, one thing that is unequivocally true is that there are a lot of issues that the city is dealing with right now, of course, and City Council has a lot on its plate as well, just like the Kennedy administration does. And they've had a very busy fall trying to move through a number of different pieces of legislation addressing all sorts of things, public safety related, small business related, land use and development related, and they just have not gotten to redistricting yet. I gotta say, I guess at the same time, this would be a reason for City Council not to be the body that does the work, because they don't have a lot of time for it. But that roadmap has been shared with City Council and their staff. We plan on going back to their offices and frankly kind of elevating this set of issues much more now that we're getting towards the end of this particular council session, whether it is in the next week or two before the holidays, or when we come back after the holidays and in the new year. We're gonna have to really crank up the volume on these steps that they're going to take. They will have to put something forward, because it is a piece of legislation. They will have to put forward a bill that describes the districts, and so there will be a minimal amount of time for people to, or there'll have to be some amount of time for people to look at a map and respond, but it's probably going to be a pretty compressed amount of time. Could be just a few weeks. So yeah, short answer is yes. We're gonna try to press them as best we can to, like as you said, be proactive in hearing from folks and not just reactive. And frankly, even worse than that, just try to ram something through without any input at all, which has happened before.
I have a question. This is Pat
Yeah.
White. The 2 council people for those districts are?
Oh, for the second and third?
Yes.
Yeah. So the second district is Kenyatta Johnson. All right, and then the second, of course, covers pretty much all of Southwest, or vast majority of Southwest, and then South Philly west of Broad, and then the South Philly where the stadiums are. The third district is currently represented by Jamie Gaudier, and covers not all of West Philly, but a big chunk of West Philly, including Parkside, up to Carroll Park, part of Haddington, and then cutting through Cobbs Creek. So it's Jamie Gaudier and Kenyatta Johnson who represent these 2 districts.
Is the airport included in that area for Kenyatta Johnson?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Charlene, great question about what City Council as the mapping body should be doing here in the coming weeks. Other initial questions just about the process itself of redistricting and why it can matter. If not, we may move into talking about the boundaries themselves, at least the Southwest. And I see Mark Carroll. Mark, I'm really glad you made it here this morning. We'll definitely be calling your knowledge for the area and kind of what's happening. Great to
Hey, Pat, good to see you. Yeah, this is I had shared this with a lot of people because it's a conversation that really needs to be had. So I'm looking forward to good information coming out of this, so I can continue to share with folks. So I'm gonna sit back and let you continue to do your thing. But good to see you, Pat.
Yeah, you too. Well, don't sit back too far because we're gonna pull up a map of the area pretty soon.
I'm right here. I'm right here.
All right.
All right.
Okay, so let's see. Abu, do you think we're ready? Just about to pull up the map. I guess so. I will do that. Whoops. Oh, actually, no. I missed something, didn't I? I need to pull up the. I need to pull up the last slide. I'm sorry about that. Just bear with me for 1 second. I realize there's one more slide that we take folks through before we actually zoom in on. For 1 second. All right, come on, computer. All right, so you should be seeing my screen again. Looking ahead. Glad you just bear with me. Hey, there we go. All right, so everyone should see another slide here with a map of the city. Realize there are a bunch of numbers here, and we will walk through where they are. Charlene, I will be keeping your guidance in mind here as far as pace. So in the top left-hand corner of the screen, we have 3 figures. The target population is basically what you get when you take the city's total population, right? 1.6 million people divided by 10. That will get you about 160,000 people. So that's what we're aiming for to have in each council district, about 160,000. But fortunately, there's also we have a bit of a range. A rule of thumb as to how many or how few people we can have in a given district. And the range is basically this: the district in the new map that has the fewest people can have no fewer than about 152,400 people. The district with the most people, the most populous district, could have no more than 168,400 people. So we have this range to work with, which is actually a really good thing, because if we had to, and actually this happens at the congressional level, if we had to get the districts exactly the same, basically when each district would have 160,400 people, that would be a bad thing, because we would have to split neighborhoods all over the place, split communities all over the place just to achieve perfect population equality. So there's a bit of a tension in the objectives you have here when you draw a map. Population equality is one, and that's a really important one. Keeping communities whole is another. So it's actually a good thing we have a bit of a range to work within. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you see the population figures for each district, right? 1 through 10. And what we've done is we've highlighted those districts that have either too many or too few people. So the districts that are highlighted in red, they have too many, right? So the first district is currently represented by Mark Squilla, right? The first district is a very long one, stretches all the way down to South Philly, down to the interstate and the bridge, all the way up through Center City, through parts of Fishtown, Northern Liberties, and up into Kensington, Port Richmond. Very, very long district. Been a lot of new residents, a lot of development and gentrification across parts of that district, especially in the northern and the southern parts. And so, yeah, so the first district has a lot of people in it, has too many people in it, in fact. The fifth district, currently represented by Daryl Clark, also has too many people, right? There's also been a lot of development, a lot of new residents in parts of the fifth district. So the first and the fifth, they have to basically lose people. They have to give people away to a neighboring district. And when we draw these lines, of course, it's not person by person, property by property, or block by block. It's division by division. These are the same divisions we use for elections. And each division holds hundreds of people, usually somewhere like in the 1,000 range, maybe 1,000 people, 1,500 people, maybe. So it's basically a number of divisions that will have to come out of the first district and into a neighboring district. A certain number of divisions that will have to come out of the fifth district and go into a neighboring district. So those districts have too many people. The fourth and the eighth have too few. The fourth district currently represented by Curtis Jones Jr., big part of West Philly, and then all the way up to the northwest, at least on the southern side of Fairmount Park. And despite there being a good bit of development and new residents in Roxborough and Manayunk, and the fourth district did grow according to the census over the past 10 years, but it didn't grow as much as other places. So you can see the fourth district only has about 147,000 people. That means that the fourth will have to pick up at least at least 5,000 people from some direction, right? And when you have to pick up divisions, they can only come from so many directions. So the 4th will have to pick up, for example, from the 8th, from the 5th, or from the 3rd in West Philly. Right, the fourth district can't pick up divisions from like the 10th, for example, over the Northeast. So the 8th district, currently represented by Cindy Bass, was also short of people, and will have to pick up at least several thousand people from a given direction, whether it's from the 4th, from the 9th, from the 5th, or from the 7th, and from some adjacent districts. So, you know, I think it'd be fair for us to note. And this is why we don't think the map is going to change dramatically or radically. There are these population differences that do have to be addressed, and the population figures do have to be evened out between the 10 districts. But it's not like there's a population bomb in one part of the city that'll require that the map change in a way that we wouldn't recognize it. So just again, this kind of starts to show you where the pressures and the pulls are on these boundaries. And Abu, let me hand it over to you real quick for.
I wanted to see, Pat, do you want to talk more about the 6th district and how we may see a shift in population change based on the prison data and the relocation of those folks going back to their districts?
Yeah, no, great point. Yeah, thanks for flagging that. So, you know, at the state level, we've actually had a really important decision made for state house and state senate districts, where the 5-member body that draws those state legislative districts, they decided, and this is basically because our own Representative Joanne McClinton sits on that very powerful body and pushed to get this decision made. We will have thousands of Pennsylvanians who are held right now in state-run correctional facilities. They will be counted back home for the purposes of state legislative redistricting. So there are thousands, not hundreds, but thousands of Philadelphians who are held in other parts of Philadelphia and other parts of Pennsylvania. And this is one of the asks of City Council, actually, that for the purposes of drawing council districts, that we count those folks back here in Philly. And when we do that, and we actually know what the numbers look like already, you know, we're going to have those thousands of Philadelphians kind of sprinkled back across the entire city and their home districts. And it may not have a huge effect actually on the shapes of these boundaries, but what Abu just pointed out is that we also have, of course, city-run detention centers, right? City-run jails run by the city of Philadelphia. Those folks were not affected by that state-level decision, and so there were 4,000 to 5,000 people who were held up in the 6th district, and we have a handful of city-run jails. They're all on State Road in the 6th district. The 6th district is in Northeast Philadelphia. All those folks were counted in those facilities during the 2020 census. And this is the way the census does things. If you're in a group quarters home, whether it's a group quarters facility, whether it is a jail or a prison or a homeless shelter, any facility where someone is being held or stays for a long time, you get counted there during the census. So these folks were counted up in the Northeast in those city-run jails last year. And that is not a good thing. That is unfair for a variety of reasons. And one obvious one is that the folks held in those facilities are not from the 6th district, and maybe some of them are, and some of them may actually, a very small number may actually be from like nearby where the facilities are, but the vast majority of them are not from that area. So they should be counted back home at their home or last known address elsewhere in Philly for the purposes of drawing our council districts. And what this means for the 6th district is actually the 6th district kind of gets like the benefit of having a bunch of folks behind bars up there, and it actually kind of inflates the political power of 6th district voters. And it dilutes or harms the political power of those communities elsewhere in Philly where those folks are from, but they're not counted. So that's what Abu was just noted. Like that actually could have an impact here, because the 6th district. Actually, let's look at the 6th district. The 6th district has 167,000 people, but in reality, right, they don't actually have 167,000 people who live there. They have more like 162,000 or 163,000 perhaps that actually live there in the 6th district. Charlene, you got a hand? Oh, you're enough. Yeah, there you go.
Yes. Well, hopefully, City Council will take from what the Legislative Reapportionment Commission did in ending prison gerrymandering. That what is happening in District 6, we would refer to as prison gerrymandering, and with all that head count that they don't deserve, and diluting the districts that the prisoners came from. But what I also wanted to see, with 6 aside, if District 8 needs additional. Right now, they can't pull from 9 because 9 is where it needs to be. 7 is where it needs to be. So it looks like the only option is 4. So 4 needs more. They're going to have to take from 5. 5 needs to get rid of head count. And so it would be okay giving to District 4. But since 1 has to get rid of folks, 1 would then go into 5. That's what I'm seeing right now. I don't know if everybody else is seeing that. But what I don't know is what the population makeup is and what that would do as far as maybe diluting BIPOC population. So can you address that with District 1 partial population going into 5, 5 into 4, 4 into 8?
Yeah. That's a. But do you want? I mean, sorry, come up here. Do you want to take a crack at that?
Oh no, you can take a crack because I think it would probably be more visual if we jump into the map and kind of look at the populations in the areas that Ms. Charlene is talking about, so we can actually see, what the population demographic is, and
Right.
especially broken down by precinct or division.
Yeah. Okay. So everybody should see a different looking map of the city, and this is one of those mapping tools that Charlene mentioned earlier that very fortunately everybody has access to now. This is something that we linked to on 70's website, and we'll make sure that there's a link to this in the email that everyone gets after the meeting. But this is the sort of technology that previously only the professionals would have, right, inside government. Today, everybody has access to this sort of stuff. And for those who have the time and inclination, you can actually start fiddling with the districts, just kind of the way, actually, what Charlene was just kind of talking through right now shows pretty directly why there's a bit of a ripple effect across the city. And why the changes that we see, surely will not be isolated, for example, only to those districts that have too many or too few people. When you draw a political map, they're going to be, because a ripple effect, kind of again from district to district to district, as you kind of move people from one to the next and to the next. And frankly, it's kind of hard to see exactly how that will happen until you start fiddling with the map, or until when City Council puts forward its proposal. But Charlene, part of your question was about BIPOC communities and how they will be impacted, right, by these lines shifting around. And I think part of the answer to that question is it really depends on the part of the city that we're looking at. I mean, of course, this is just my kind of first dig at the here. So in North, see, my internet connection stays getting unstable. Hopefully I'm still coming through. But here in North Philly, for example, right, you mentioned there could be a number of changes here between the 4th needed to pick up divisions, the 8th needed to pick up divisions, the 5th needed to give away divisions, the 7th is actually kind of already where it needs to be. I'm not sure if the implications for BIPOC communities in this particular area will be as significant as they are just for the communities themselves and for the neighborhoods, right? You got Allegheny West, Tioga, Nicetown, and Honey Park. These communities actually they work together all the time on things and have kind of their own kind of set of coalitions, but they're split across multiple districts right now, which they figured out. They work through it, right? They kind of have to. But I think in this part of the city, it'll have less to do with the protecting or lifting up BIPOC representation as much as it'll be just about the communities or the neighborhoods themselves. But that's not the case in every part of the city. Over here in the 1st district, for example, one of the potential changes would be if this part of Fishtown right here, this little extension to the 5th, if this extension gets added to the 1st, and there's a neighborhood reason to add this to the 1st, and that Fishtown is split right now. There are also a lot of folks in this little part of Fishtown right now who are new residents of the city. They're predominantly white. Adding a lot of white residents, a lot of white voters to the 1st will make the 1st district as a whole like more white, right? And that may diminish the BIPOC political power across the 1st district. So that's where, again, we see kind of a trade-off here where it may be a good thing for the neighborhood of Fishtown to be added to the 1st, right? Because Fishtown is split. As far as BIPOC voting power goes across the 1st district, it would become a bit diminished perhaps by making that change. One other example that's come up is that the Chinese community, which of course Chinatown is much more concentrated right now, all within the 1st district. The Chinese community in the Northeast is a bit more spread out. Part of the Chinese community is in the 9th, partly in the 7th right here, partly in the 6th, and even on the other side of the Roosevelt Boulevard in Mayfair. And so there's been talk among some of the Chinese leaders in the Northeast to try to include more of their community within one district, right, and kind of preserve their political power a bit more. So it's a great question, and it's kind of a complicated one because it kind of depends on what part of the city you're looking at. All right, so what we'll do, and I guess I should have done this at the outset, is just to get us oriented at this map, right here, right where the Philadelphia label is and where the cursor is right now. This is where City Hall is, right? North Broad running north, South Broad running south, and then Market Street running east to west. And again, we've had we will have had 12 of these meetings by mid-December that Abu and I are trying to support for different parts of the city. For the one this morning, to the extent we're able to have some conversation about this, is primarily for the boundary between the 2nd and the 3rd, right? So again, these are huge districts. We're trying to focus the discussions as much as we can, but this is one potential district that it maybe it does shift, maybe it does not. But if it were to, we'd want to know what folks think about that. We'd also want to know, if folks kind of really like this boundary right now, kind of where it is, to have a good sense of that too. So on the east side of this boundary between the 2nd and the 3rd, you can see it's kind of smooth and curved. So this is the Schuylkill River, right? I mean, and when it comes to redistricting, there are artificial boundaries that make sense. Major thoroughfares, highways, boulevards, Roosevelt Boulevard, for example. There are natural boundaries as well. Rivers are an obvious example of that. So that is of course why Schuylkill River was used as a boundary here. And maybe this boundary changes, maybe it doesn't. But zooming in a bit farther between the 2nd and the 3rd, this is where the boundary does cut through King Sessing right now. And I'm just going to go in a bit further so we can see where the lines are. On this side of the boundary between the 2nd in green and the 3rd in purple, this is Springfield Avenue, right? Coming in here right off of Cobbs Creek Parkway. So here's Springfield. It starts to dip to the south here along 57th. Whoops, excuse me, just zooming down a little bit more here.
Did we lose you, Pat?
You're frozen, Pat.
Here, as you keep going south,
You froze.
Oh, bear with me. I'm sorry about that. Here, I'll just go again, just real quick. Springfield Avenue up here to the north, South 57th, coming down to Woodland Avenue. And then it juts to the east and towards Bartram's Garden until it hits Lindbergh Boulevard and comes all the way down Lindbergh Boulevard here. Includes just one stretch of residential neighborhoods on the west side of Lindbergh Boulevard, close to Eastbrook Ave. And then this is where, when you pull back the screen, it looks just a little bit funky because it goes down 63rd Street, South 63rd, all the rest of the way to the river, which of course, this entire kind of boot area is largely industrial and commercial. So realize that may be kind of hard to see as we zoom in on the screen, especially if I'm jumping in and out with the internet. I apologize about that. But this is predominantly the boundary that we were hoping to talk about a little bit this morning. So here, let me pause there. I know I was jumping in and out, but kind of questions about the boundary or what some of these roads are, especially for folks who live nearby.
I have a question. So
Please.
there are pockets of neighborhood in this area where we're talking about, not a lot, but there are pockets around, I think it's Passyunk Avenue. Would that be fair to say that there are, even though it's industrial, I think there are little pockets of streets and neighborhoods in that particular area. Is that fair to say or no?
No, that is fair to say. That is fair to say. I think well, here's one stretch, right? This is residential. I'm not sure. Let's see. Really, as we get to this part of 61st and all the way to Passyunk, I think it is predominantly industrial. I mean, there may be some residential pockets within them, but yeah, Pat, thanks for flagging that. You're exactly right. It's not exclusively industrial across this entire boot.
I have another question about, I think it's the second, is the Gaudier's area with universities in that area, the students who are residents for that short period of time that they're in school, were they included in the census as well?
That is a good question. So usually they are. Usually college and university students stay on campus are counted at those locations during the census. Because this was such an unusual census on a different timeline and during the pandemic, there was probably a decent number of students who went home because school was closed or it was remote, and they got counted at home instead. So usually there are a whole bunch of young folks who are counted here. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are, but I suspect there were fewer young folks who were counted in University City in this particular census. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, good question. Good question. Especially because Pat, that does affect kind of what what the overall shape of the third district may need to be, and whether or not it has to pick up or lose people.
And also, are they registered voters in the city of Philadelphia? Are these students registered voters for the time that they're here? Are they registering to vote? Is another issue.
True. Yep. Yes, and some are. Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's and I should have stressed at the outset, but we'll note here again. For the purposes of all these meetings, we're staying focused on the boundaries themselves. Not necessarily the council members who represent them. I know that it's very, very difficult to separate those two things: who represent the district at a given time and the boundaries that we're looking at. But at least for our purposes this morning, let's definitely try to keep those separate and focus just on the boundaries and what those boundaries mean for the communities in a given area. So actually, if it's okay, Mark, I hate to put you on the spot, but if I could, is there anything that kind of strikes you about the boundary, kind of where it is right now, or the neighborhoods or communities that are around here that may or may not be split here? I know that I mean, and that includes like the RCOs that may have boundaries in the area.
Well, it's interesting because where the second dips in where you Springfield 57th. And that includes the Myers Recreation Center, which is in Councilman Johnson's district. But that's only because those boundaries dip into down to 57th Street and they come around. But as you can see in the purple, it's almost like a peninsula, right, where Councilman Johnson's, and the rec centers are huge in terms of where they're located, who has the councilmanic responsibility for these rec centers, especially as you look at rebuild and those sort of things. So Councilman Johnson has been the office who with rebuild has had a responsibility for Myers, and then you have King Session on the Gaudier side. So it's going to be real key as to that what happens with that boundary line right there? Does it stay? Is it, because it's only a matter of a couple of blocks, which will change the responsibility from Gardier to Johnson or Johnson to Gardier. So that's gonna that area right there is gonna be real key in terms of whether that stays or whether that changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely here. And this is one of the things where surely the folks who use the Francis Myers Rec Center, right? They're coming from all all over this area, both the second and the third.
Right.
Right, regardless of where the council boundaries are.
And Councilman Johnson also has a satellite office at Myers. So like, what would happen if those boundaries change there? It's those are kind of questions that come from from the community.
What would be your sense about? I mean, folks in the area, whether it's like the King Session neighborhood, or just like looking at some of the more major thoroughfares, major roads. What would their sense just be like? And not looking at or not even knowing about the council boundaries, what would folks think about as the natural boundaries in a given area, the community boundaries and neighborhood boundaries? Yeah.
Well, I mean, 58th Street is a natural boundary. But the second dips into 57th Street. That confuses a lot of folks.
Right.
To give an example, I live on Florence, 5700 block of Florence. So everyone who lives on my side of the street, our state representative is in the 188th district. Everybody on directly across the street from me, their state representative is Joanna Clinton. And so it's like our block is split right down the middle. But when you're talking about the councilmanic districts, 58th Street is a natural boundary. So people get confused about who their city council person is when they live in that area, because they're not aware of the dip. So when these boundaries are created and they dip, and I understand when you're talking about divisions, which is why those dips and divots take place. The lay person doesn't understand that. So they figure, well, if I'm on this side of 58th Street, why is, this person my council person and that person isn't? Where right across the street, somebody else is the council person. So education is going to be real key when explaining this to the residents.
Yeah. So that's really important and interesting to hear. And if 58th is generally thought of as a kind of a shared boundary, and Mark, you just noted, like, it's the divisions that we use here for drawing these council districts. So I suppose even if we wanted to use 58th as kind of that clean division here between the second and the third, you can see the little purple lines here are the division lines. So this division right here is actually kind of a big one, and I guess it's bigger because it includes all the rec center territory. And the division goes all the way up to 57th. This division here also crosses 58th, goes up to 57th. So and
that changes the ward structure as well. Like, I'm in the 51st ward, and at Myers you have the 3rd and the 51st, like right across the street from each other. So it gets confusing to a lot of folks around election time in terms of what ward they're in, who their council person is.
Well, I guess right here it's both the third ward, the 40th and the 51st, all kind of come together.
All four. I mean, all three.
Yeah. Well, Mark, what about on over here on the east side? I mean, Limber Boulevard is a big old road, and this is I don't know exactly what the story is for this kind of boot, but y'all can see these divisions are really big, right? The purple lines that are the division lines. So this entire chunk here is division, and the reason it's so geographically big is because there's so few people that live here, right? Again, this is most industrial.
And if I'm not mistaken, because I'm actually using my phone. I'm kind of remote right now, but so I can't see it as well as if it was on my laptop. But I know Bartram's Gardens is over there, so I'm trying to see the map.
Right off
Well,
of
like what-
Elmwood. Yeah, right off of Elmwood. Bartram's Gardens, yeah.
Okay, so just the west of that purple area, that's that residential pocket that was spoken of earlier.
Mhm.
But I believe, the Bartram's Gardens is in actually the third, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Mhm.
Right. So most of that, you have Bartram Gardens and you have Bartram Village. And then like, again, right across the street, you'll have the second. And that's
Mhm.
Lindbergh, that's Lindbergh Boulevard there.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And would your sense be like the folks who live across from Bartram Garden on the other side of Lindbergh Boulevard, they'd see them, would they kind of associate, because there's a few blocks that's north of 58th, and then of course and then most of the second district is on the other side. But with most of these folks on the west side of Lindbergh here, this is right around the fields at Elmwood. Would they see themselves more part of Southwest or more part of like West Philly proper?
Oh, that's clearly Southwest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
That's everything over there is clearly Southwest.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that because growing up in Southwest Philadelphia, people below 49th Street even considers them below. If you live below 49th Street and south of Baltimore Avenue, people still consider that Southwest. But from a mapping standpoint, the 12th district stops at 49th Street. So you have the 18th district, which is West Philadelphia, quote unquote. Everything below 49th Street is the 18th police district. But people who historically live there still consider that Southwest Philadelphia. But in terms of the map, that's it's considered West Philadelphia. But we've always looked at, if you're south of Baltimore Avenue, you're in Southwest Philly.
Right.
According to the maps, it's if it's east of 49th Street, you're in West Philadelphia, and that confuses people as well.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. 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 And surely I think just because of the population numbers, I think it'd be pretty unlikely, like the second district, for example, as the predominantly Southwest district, to extend all the way up to 49th. That'd be a lot of people in here, I guess, in and around the Kingsession who'd be added to the second, and that would create a huge change for the third. It create a huge change for the first on the other side as well. So I guess is it fair to say it kind of sounds like, where this was drawn and trying to hew as closely as possible, both to 58th to the extent that was possible, given the division shapes, and then also to use Lindbergh Boulevard. Those were actually pretty decent lines to try to draw here. If you couldn't go all the way up to 49th, then 58th and Lindbergh were decent boundaries. Make sense for a lot of folks.
For me, it would.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Just for the sake of as like a scenario, it would seem unlikely that the third district would push farther south, but I guess could be a possibility. Especially if the fourth district needs to pick up divisions, and the fourth district moves deeper into West Philly and into the third, then the third district then has to push farther into the Southwest. Looking at the map here, after 58th, like there isn't where would the next kind of natural boundary be if there would be one, and maybe there isn't.
And Cows Creek Parkway would be the next natural boundary.
Right.
And that's only a matter of a couple blocks, depending on where you are on between 58th and Cows Creek Parkway. Right.
Yeah. Because looking at the more major roads that run, northwest, southeast. 65th, for example, I guess it may be a bigger one, but that's way down there. And I don't think there'd be any way that the third district would go all the way down to 65th. And I guess Mark, I guess that would probably also confuse a lot of folks if the third district went that far south.
Oh, that would be, from a at a glance standpoint, like, why is this all the way over here?
Right. does it ever come up the fact that the this big boot here is part of the third as opposed to the second? Does that?
You know, what was interesting when Jamie Blackwell was in office, it was an area that she, you know, people knew that Janie was the council person, but there's still a lot of confusion because it's a boot, and
Right.
because it's again, it's like a peninsula, so it's surrounded by the second councilmanic district. So again, from the lay person really doesn't understand how this works. So it gets real confusing around election time in terms of where your polling place is, who your council person is. Even with the RCO process, it's like, you know, with the RCO process is, you know, your RCO is coordinating RCO for projects are determined by your council person's office. And people are like, okay, well, is this Cartier or is this Johnson? So the main thing is that this whole process needs to be a real layman's education piece that gives people an opportunity to understand this process without, you know, the jargon, the we need to create like a lexicon where people can understand the terminology and why certain things are done the way they're done, and you know, because you know, it gets real confusing to folks.
Yeah, no, yes, absolutely, it absolutely does. Absolutely does. Well, folks, we're coming up close to time here. Other kind of thoughts, questions, concerns about this particular boundary, in particular, again, between the second and the third. I didn't hear anyone make the case for the well, I guess, and we really weren't talking about the Schuylkill River boundaries much, but anyone has thoughts about that boundary change, and be welcome to hear them. But I suspect folks think that the Schuylkill River is a pretty good line on its own. Also, kind of across.
I don't think there's much we can do about the river.
That's right. That's right. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna pull off share screen there. All right. Well, that was incredibly helpful and instructive. I hope folks realize that I should have noted the outset, but the recording button has been going since the beginning. We are recording all these meetings across the city, posting them on somebody's website and putting them on YouTube. Basically, again, trying to develop kind of a public record here of what folks think about this stuff as council gets ready to draw their map. So these meetings and the recordings is one part of the public record. The public or online survey that's linked to on 70's website, and that we'll make sure everybody gets here after the meeting is another way to weigh in, whether as an individual or even kind of more powerfully on behalf of a group or organization. And then I think we just want to stress again that this is just kind of one step of a larger campaign. Mark, as you noted, like this stuff it's kind of confusing. There's also like just a lot of other stuff happening out there, and there's only so much attention that can be devoted to this particular matter for a certain amount of time. So, we're going to grind through all these meetings, these community meetings, virtual meetings through mid-December here. And then in January and February, that's when we'll really be in crunch time with council getting ready to drop their mapping proposal. And then Charlene, to your point, I think trying to crank up the volume as best we can and pressure and incentive for council to take some steps itself to involve folks.
Cool. So you say you're going to send a link out to that map?
Yes. Yeah, we absolutely will.
Cool.
Absolutely will. Yeah.
And you're going to send us the roadmap that you sent to council?
Yes, we can include that too.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So let's see. Abu, is there other stuff we needed to kind of note before we wrap up here?
Next steps, we'll follow with an email, and for as we're trying to figure out when council is going to release their maps, hopefully in January, we're thinking about strategically on what that looks like and how we're going to figure out some mobilization tactics on getting our voices to the table. So just look out for another email with that. And also please take some time to check out the survey. I think, you know, once you guys get into the survey and start moving the maps and getting familiar with, I think you'll like it. So I appreciate you guys coming out on a Saturday morning. I know that, you know, it's Christmas season and it's a lot of like Christmas parties happening across the city. So I appreciate you guys and thank you so much.
Abu, I have a question about the survey.
Yes, sir.
I'm in my ward. I want to be able to have my ward actually do the survey. So I'm really interested in talking to you more about the survey.
I would definitely follow up with you on Monday.
Excellent. And Pat, Merry Christmas, bro.
Merry Christmas to you, Mark. Glad you made it. I was as long as Mark's here, we're gonna have a lot to talk about. It knows the area inside and out.
And hello to everybody else that was on.
Yeah,
Thank you
so
guys.
much.
I really, really, really appreciate you guys sharing this information. It's really, really important. So thanks again and have a great holiday.
Of course, our pleasure. Our pleasure. Happy holidays, folks. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll be talking soon.
All right, thank you.
All right, take care.